Girl, why are you looking at me like that? You don't like my shades? Yes, this is my Mary J. Blige. This is my Mary J. Blige look, girl. You like it? You don't like it? Girl, you bought them, girl. What?
I don't know, comrade.
My eyes got crowns on them. Oh, wait, hold on. No, I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna shed no tears. No, I'm not gonna cry. 'Cause you're not worth my.
Y'all in here?
I'm about to say, 'cause I don't see nobody.
Where y'all at? Like.
Oh, there go one. We got one. Good morning, Black Power.
Y'all about to have two.
Oh, we about to have two.
Mm-hmm. If my.
Ooh, excuse me.
Call it what? Okay.
Oh, we already got two already. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Woo. This chapter 5. My. Good morning, everybody. What's up? What's good? How y'all doing? Black Power. Please make sure you come in and share. Put hashtag sharing in the comments when you share. My trappers. Hashtag put hashtag trapper if you are the trapper. If you are a revolutionary book trapper, put hashtag trapper. Good morning, Asid. Black Power Tariva. Y'all gotta put hashtag trapper in the comments now. Good morning, Black Power Chikonde. Black Power Robert.
I'm about to put tappers, not trappers.
If you a trapper, put hashtag trapper. Y'all like my shades? Nyah bought my shades for me. Don't I give y'all? Black Power comrade. What's up, Kendrick?
I'm good.
You doing okay? I'm giving Mary J. Blige realness teas right now.
I do not remember her having a pair of glasses like that.
It didn't have the crown on it.
Okay.
But
I'm just hating right now, so just.
Instead, if you don't know, a trapper is somebody who comes onto the revolutionary book trap to participate in this revolutionary conversation. And no, my shade's not being shady. You know, I'm just.
Gotta get up on the lingo, Sid.
How does the song start off?
Which one? The one you were singing?
I don't want to say, yeah. I was your lover and your secretary, working every day of the week. Was that the job when no one else was there? Helping you get on your feet. 11 years I sacrificed. Ooh, let me take this off. My Mary J. Blige trying to come out right now. I don't know the camera. I don't know what's going on.
I see.
But
She
Black
was
Power,
here.
yeah, she was here. You
I
felt her?
her.
You
Yeah,
felt? Okay, I felt her
did.
too. Like, I felt that.
I felt it. I felt her.
Auntie Mary in the building. It's like, okay, let me stop. But Black Power and good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Revolutionary Book Trap with your boy, Chief Dia.
Chief Nyah.
We hope y'all doing well today. Thank you all for joining us for another Sunday, you know, to carry out this book trap. How you feeling, comrade? You feeling good? You feeling okay?
I feel all right.
That's
Have some
what's
orange
up.
juice. I'm good.
Hey. All right, y'all. So y'all already know what it is. Let me take these glasses off. Okay. Today we are going to be finishing up chapter 5 of How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by our brother Walter Rodney. And y'all know we've been on this book for quite a second now, you know, and it's been a very long and powerful, just profound read right now. And this book has just been so captivating. So captivating. But today is a special episode of the Revolutionary Book Trap. And I'm going to tell you why. You want to know why? Why? All right, so you know me and Nyah are part of the Atlanta, Georgia unit of Black Hammer. And so we've been in the lab working on and brainstorming our next event. And I'm so enthused to announce that we are going to be hosting the Lyrics and Ladles. So you know, like lyrics when people sing, and then like ladle, like when people like ladle soup or like food and stuff like that.
Okay,
right?
okay.
It's a play on words.
Okay.
You get it?
I get it.
Okay. So it's going to be an open.
I didn't know at first.
Really?
I didn't.
Oh wow, comrade.
Thank you.
You got that clarity?
I got it.
You got it?
I
Okay.
got it. Thank you.
But yes, we are going to be hosting our Lyrics and Ladles open mic series on April 11th at the Black Dot Culture Center. Could I get a whoop to the whoop, 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 whoop? So, Lyrics and Ladles, let me tell y'all what it's about. So, Lyrics and Ladles is an open mic series where we're going to have local talent, rappers, singers, musicians, poets, dancers, come down to the Black Dot Cultural Center, which is the place where Black Hammer officially launched. So, you know, it was only right that we had to go back to where this whole thing began. So that's going to be April 11th. So yeah, we're going to have rappers, singers, dancers, musicians. And of course, Black Hammer's going to be there as well. And we're going to, you know, create this atmosphere of like, you know, unity and fellowship where we can share in the gifts of, you know, local talent and, you know, just have a good time. And not only have a good time, but while we're at Lyrics and Ladles, we're going to be raising donations to fund our next homeless food drive.
That's right.
And so, you know, we was thinking, we was brainstorming, the wheels was turning, they was turning. So we was like, okay, so how can we get people to donate and, you know, like give food for the homeless food drive? So here's what we decided. So when you come to the event at the door, you can donate funds like money, like resources, on a sliding scale from $5 to $10. So anywhere in between $5 and $10 you can donate to get entry into the event. Or you can bring a food item that's going to be on the menu for our next homeless food drive. So that way we could just, if you bring chicken, if you bring vegetables, if you bring bread or anything else of that nature, we could just put it towards fruit. Yeah, we could just put it towards the next homeless food drive. And it's going to be a series. We're calling it an open mic series because what we want to do is host this event on a bi-monthly basis, meaning like every other month you can expect the Lyrics and Ladles open mic series to happen. And we want it to be on a bi-monthly, you know, basis because not only are we hosting the open mic series, but in between time, the resources that we raise from the event will go to the homeless food drive. So that way we can have the open mic series and the homeless food drive happening at the same time. You get what I'm saying?
That's what's up.
So, you know, this is what we, the Atlanta unit, shout out to Comrade Terry, Garcia, Angelica, Comrade Muhammadu, Comrade Summer, all of the comrades, you know, here in the Atlanta unit, you know, working on this thing and putting it together. So right now we are at a place where we have to raise $700 to make sure that this event goes off without a hitch. So we've been, you know, looking at the budget, the logistics and things of that nature. So as we did with the homeless food drive, Comrade Nyah and I will be coming to y'all, you know, periodically, asking for resources so we can make sure that we have this event. And, you know, we don't want it to be, we want this event to be huge. We want it to be major. And this is like one of the this is the first major like event outside of the homeless food drives that the Atlanta unit is putting on. And, you know, just following the political line of Black Hammer, the Atlanta unit is supposed to be like the cultural hub, you know, of the organization. So, I mean, right now we're starting with the open mic series, but, you know, we're going to venture into like dance classes, spiritual classes, like all of these things that we can reach our people on a cultural level. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, we put that revolutionary seasoning on it.
That's right.
Like that, you know?
Because
like that.
Atlanta, I'm going to tell y'all, one of the reasons I love living here, even though it needs some work, is it is already a huge cultural hub.
Yes.
There are a lot of Black people here, and we love, we love food, mm-hmm. we love, you know, music, mm-hmm. we love everything about culture, we love poetry. And I mean, it's in our DNA. So mm-hmm. we need to, as the revolutionaries here, the one of the major revolutionary organizations here, mm-hmm. we need to spark that here and bring the two together. I'm really excited.
Yes, comrade. And you know, I was just watching that clip of our comrade Nina Simone like the other day, and you know, it's this famous clip that, you know, everybody tries to use like in their music and everything like that, where she's just speaking about the culture of Black people and how beautiful we are. And, you know, just like how she says that as an artist, it's her responsibility to reach the Black masses and to raise their consciousness in terms of, you know, just understanding who we are culturally as a people. And she says, either it's going, if I do it outright, or if I have to do it by hook or crook, or whatever, you know, I have to bring that revolutionary consciousness to my people. And, you know, that's what we doing here in Atlanta. So, with all that being said, for today's episode, we have a goal of raising $75. Now, the $75 is going to go to secure the venue. So we have to put down a $75 non-refundable deposit to make sure that we can secure the venue. Mm-hmm. Now we've tried, like we were trying to go for March, I think we wanted to try to do the 22nd of March, but every third Saturday, the Black Culture Dot has a event there, so we couldn't get that. And then we tried for April 4th, but that was taken. So the next date that they had open was April 11th. So that's what we're going to go with. And, you know, that's definitely going to be the maximum amount of time to make sure that we can push the event and really build like an audience around it. So if you can, please donate by going to, you can donate through CashApp with the $ BlackHammerOrg, or you can go to GoFundMe.com/BlackHammerOrg, or you can go to BlackHammer.org and just donate through there. But if you do donate through GoFundMe or the Cash App, just make sure that you put in a notation that is for Lyrics and Ladles Open Mic. Just make sure you put that in the comments so we can know where the
or ATL, something like
Atlanta
that.
unit, anything of that nature. I'm so freaking excited. So
I'm excited too, and I do want to tell you guys about another event that another chapter is doing.
Yes.
They will be doing the self-defense workshop that's going to be happening a week from yesterday, the 15th. It's going to be from 2 to 4 p.m. Pacific time. So if you're in the area, you can be at the Stanford Avenue Park at 2 to 4 p.m. And they're going to be doing defense classes. They're going to give you guys pepper sprays. They're going to show you how to use them safely. I kind of want to go to that, but yeah, this is going to be dope. And so, yeah, y'all want to get up on that. And if you want to donate, you can donate to $Cali Hammers. $Cali Hammers. So.
And that's something that we might even do here in Atlanta. So.
Yep, at our next gun club. And
okay, real quick. Okay, 2 other things before we get into the book. Okay, so first, the Revolutionary Book Trap in the Propaganda Podcast will be launching on February 20th. February 20th, okay? So make sure y'all lock that down in your calendars and everything like that so you can tune in on Audio Boom. It's going to be on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Music, all that good stuff. So February 20th. Make sure you lock that in. The second thing, we want our viewers, if you follow the Revolutionary Book Trap, if you support the Revolutionary Book Trap, we would like to create a collage of all of our viewership, of all of our supporters, so we can promote the Revolutionary Book Trap. And we also want to just show appreciation to everybody who has been supporting the Revolutionary Book Trap up to this point. So here's what you got to do, okay? So we want you to get a poster board, right? So on this poster board, write, I'm a hashtag trapper of the Revolutionary Book Trap. And then put your city and your state and just hold it up, take a picture, and then email it to us, blackhammerorg@gmail.com, and just make sure you put the Revolutionary Book Trap in the subject line, okay? So we're going to make a huge collage of everybody who has been watching us, who has been supporting us, and we want to put y'all out there because we got to show y'all, appreciation, okay? All right, so, whoo! You ready?
Ready to get into this?
Okay. All right, y'all. So we're finishing up chapter 5 of How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And we said that our next, we were going to be reading from the shipping and banking services. So, Walter Rodney, our brother who has been breaking all of this stuff down, and it's just so that we're reminded, the chapter 5 was solely based on how the underdevelopment of Africa went to building the capitalist system of Europe, pretty much giving legs to the European economy, in terms of shipping services, business services, banks, all of these major institutions, insurance companies. He is laying out how the underdevelopment of Africa went into those institutions, building those institutions. And so he starts off with talking about the shipping and banking services. And straight away, he lets us know that the shippers were a law unto themselves, meaning that they could pretty much do whatever the hell they wanted. And he says, being favorably regarded by their home governments as earners of super profits, as stimulators of industry and trade, as carriers of mail, and as contributors to the Navy when war came. And, he lets us know that as Africans, we had absolutely no control over anything that was happening, within the shipping arena, especially in terms of freight rates, which,
they were ridiculous.
Yeah. And he says, African peasants had absolutely no control over the freight rates which were charged and actually paid more than citizens in other lands. And as an example, he says that for flour from Liverpool to West Africa was 35 shillings per ton, as compared with only 7.5 shillings from Liverpool to New York, which is roughly the same goddamn distance.
Yeah.
And, just like how we were talking about, how these capitalist institutions were able to create monopolies within the shipping arena, they were called conference lines. And this is how 2 or more shippers were able to share freight loads between each other on the most favorable basis possible, as Comrade Walter describes it. And again, us Africans who are producing all of this labor, who is producing, all of these products, we had absolutely no access to. None at all. And then he goes to speak about, did you have any comments on the shipping?
I just wanted, the only thing I wanted to reiterate was just the fact that, we were paying these astronomically high rates for shipping, and we really did not stand to gain anything. So we did not profit. Literally anything that we produced and sent out, and anything when it came to shipping, we were exploited for, and we stood to gain nothing. So just...
Yeah. And then what we have to understand is that, so pretty much what we're speaking to is the surplus that was created by African labor, that we pretty much were using the resources of Africa to produce these products, but these products was taken from us and pushed to, European and other capitalist nations. And in terms of the bank, this is how he lays it out. He says, banks and finance houses dealt only with other capitalists who could prove to the bankers that whatever happened, the bank would recover its money and make a profit. So already, us as African colonized beings, we couldn't even, we had nothing to offer in terms of okay, so say if we, even today, where you have Africans who want to get business loans so we can start having businesses within our black communities and things of that nature. But because there's no economic development within our communities and we have to, again, sell our labor to these capitalist institutions, we don't have anything to offer these motherfucking, vampire-ass banks to say, hey, this is collateral, give me a loan so I can start me a business.
Redlining is still a thing. It's still a thing where African people cannot go and get non-predatory loans to buy a home for their family.
And he says the amount of surplus produced by African workers and peasants and passing into the hands of metropolitan bankers is quite phenomenal. And this is how they did it. They registered a return on capital higher even than the mining companies, and each new direct investment that they made spelled further alienation of the fruits of African labor. Furthermore, all investments in the colonies meant in effect the involvement of the big finance monopolies, since the smallest trading company was ultimately linked to a big banker. So motherfucker, I'm sorry. So this is how capitalism, by creating these monopolies and just, again, Walter Rodney says, the alienation of African labor, the fruits of African labor, we had absolutely no say in the building of these institutions that was literally using the labor of African people as fodder to feed these capitalist institutions. Ooh, thank you, comrade. Okay, yeah, just so I don't forget, y'all, we have a goal of raising $75 so we can secure the venue for our Lyrics and Ladle open mic series, April 11th, okay? So y'all already know how it goes. You can donate directly, you can donate now, or you can make a pledge and have somebody, myself or either Comrade Nyah, follow up with you at a later date when you can say, when you say that you'll be able to make a contribution. So just like Comrade Nyah just said, who got $5 on it? Who got $5 on it? We just $5, just $5. Who got $5?
Because we're a community, we can do it.
Yes,
we've done it before.
We've done it.
So we gonna do it again. So
literally, the first two homeless food drives that we had here in Atlanta, we were able to do it from raising money here on the Revolutionary Book Trap. And I mean, that just speaks to, the collective genius of African people, working in our interests, to carry out things that, support and, literally feed our people here in the city of Atlanta. So please put your pledge in the comments, or again, go to the $ BlackHammer.org through CashApp. Go to GoFundMe.com/BlackHammer.org or go to BlackHammer.org and make your contributions there so we can make sure that Lyrics and Ladles is a success. And
revolutionary success.
Right, a revolutionary success. And we already got 4 artists. Shout out to Comrade Angelica, who is on the ground organizing performers for the event. We got 4 artists right now who are very interested in performing right now. We're just waiting for them to get us their music so we can review it, listen to it, make sure that it's top quality, because, we love our people. We love our people, but
we ain't just bringing in
anybody. Yeah. We're not bringing just anybody. Your music, it gotta be lit. It gotta be lit, okay? So yeah, donate now. Donate. We gotta raise the $75, y'all. We do not want anybody to come and take April 11th away from us. We pushed this date back far enough, and we want to make sure that we get this date. So all we gotta raise is $75 this morning so we can go ahead and secure the venue. All right, Black Power. Okay, so yeah. So let's talk about how these banks were able to form like these different monopolies and things of that nature. So he says bankers again only dealt with other capitalists, and what they were able to do is to. So he says that the banks started off as small and relatively independent. But so they can put like a larger return on these investments, they begin to merge. And he says that the Banque del Senegal merged with the Banque l'Afrique Occidental, or whatever the hell you want to call that, in 1901, acquiring links with the powerful Bank of Indochina, which in turn was a special creation of several powerful metropolitan French bankers. In 1924, the Banque Commerciale de l'Afrique emerged in the French territories, linked with the Credit Lyonnais and the BNCI in France. By the time the Bank of British West Africa had its finance backed by Lloyd Banks, Westminster Bank, the Standard Bank, and the National Provincial Bank, all in England. The other great English banking firm, Barclays, and we've all heard of the Barclays, moved directly into Africa. It purchased the Colonial Bank and set it up at Barclays DCO, i.e. Dominion and Colonial. And these banks still exist today. Mm-hmm. They still exist today.
So there really is no such thing as a non-capitalist bank.
None.
There really isn't.
Ooh, Black Power. We got Tariva who says, I have 5 on it. Black Power. So we only got $70 more to raise this morning, y'all. We can do this. We can do it. And also, if you don't have the funds right now, we understand. But what you can do is share these links with your friends and your family, people who like to go to open mic series, because that's a very popular thing in our community. Where you go, you sit back in the I imagine like a smoky cafe with some incense burning, the lights with the lights dimmed real low, and you sipping on some wine,
some low drumming music.
Okay.
Yes.
I woke up this morning and there was freedom on my mind.
No colonizers.
On
my land.
Black Power, y'all. Black Power guys said, holy shit, yeah, girl, it's real. It's real. Okay, so y'all, now we're going to move on to the colonial administration as economic exploiter. So now we're going to be talking about the administration of the different things that they did within the colonies in Africa in order to produce, more exploitation, more surplus, all of this other stuff. And he starts by telling us about how, first, this is how they did it. So it was like 3 prongs that they started with. Okay? So the colonial administration was instituted to do 3 things. The first thing was to protect national interest against competition from other capitalists. Number 2, to arbitrate the conflicts between their own capitalists, meaning to, get these niggas to stop fighting, within their economic system. And lastly, to guarantee optimum conditions under which private companies could exploit Africans.
So there was always an agreement with that.
No matter what was on the table, no matter what, I don't care if me and Naya, we fighting, we gonna press these niggas. We gonna exploit these niggas. It don't matter what's going on. And he makes the point to say the last mentioned objective was the most crucial. That's why colonial governments, were repeatedly speaking about the maintenance of law and order, by which they meant the maintenance of conditions most favorable to the expansion of capitalism and the plunder of Africa. Like this is what it is. So when you hear, people talking about law and order and all that kind of stuff like that, law and order, as it's been said so many times, is nothing but the opinion of the ruling class.
Exactly.
And this, it has its origins all the way back then up until this point right now. Like, this is what happened then is what African and colonized people all around the world is dealing with right now.
It's just, I wanted to say too, he says that goes into how they impose taxes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, girl. We gotta lay that out.
He said one of the main purposes of the colonial taxation system was to provide prerequisite funds for administering the colony as a field of exploitation. Mm-hmm. European colonizers ensured that Africans paid for the upkeep of the governors and police who oppressed them.
Yes.
Just like when we have to do it here for having more police in our own fucking communities and they go around beating the fuck up out of us and killing us, we pay for that out of our tax dollars. But they try to make it seem like it's in our benefit.
And this goes back to what we were discussing like last week when we said that Africa has pretty much been the prototype, the literal continent of Africa has been the prototype of every form of oppression that we see right now. And we're literally paying taxes to fund the government, paying taxes to fund the police, paying taxes to fund these poor down, run down motherfucking hospitals that don't even, really give Africans the optimal care. And all of this other type of, all this kind of stuff like this. Like, we're paying for our own genocide. We're paying for our own genocide. And, not only were we paying taxes for, all of these different institutions, but he even goes on to say that a money tax was placed on cattle, placed on land, houses, and people, and your ass had to pay a tax to go hunting. And just so y'all know, he says, okay, an interesting example of what colonialism was all about was provided in French Equatorial Africa. Oh wait, before we even get to that part right there, y'all remember when we were talking about how we were saying that if France was cut off from the 14 countries that was paying taxes to keep this country literally afloat, that the shit would go down the drains. Listen to this. The French colonies were especially victimized in this respect, particularly since 1921. The local revenue, meaning the local revenue of the French colonies within Africa, raised from taxation, had to meet all expenses of France, not France. They had to meet all expenses of France as a country, as well as build up a reserve. So not only, and this was since 1921, we are in 2020. So not only were they getting funds, not only were they stealing funds to just even have a country, but they were stealing funds to build up a reserve so that they can have access to funds later on if they needed it. And never have to worry about it.
They would never have to worry about it. Same thing. And that's why that lifeline to Africa has to be there. It has to be there. But they need you to think that there is no lifeline to Africa, and that Africa is getting a support from not us, but from the Western civilizations. But they are literally sucking the blood out of Africa, and they have been. And this is how they sustain themselves. They are literal parasites. Literal parasites.
Hey y'all, I wanted to donate.
Ooh. Black Power Comrade Kendrick. What you got on it, comrade?
I want to donate $5.
Black Power, we got $10. Thank you, Kendrick. I'll make sure that you get the links because I know you're not on Facebook.
Yeah.
I'll make sure you get those. I'll text it to you.
Black Power
Black
Comrade,
Power
we
Comrade.
appreciate you. So, all right, y'all. All we have to raise is $65 more so we can secure the Black Dot Culture Center for the Lyrics and Ladle event. So, please go to Cash App, $BlackHammer.org. Go to GoFundMe.com/BlackHammer.org or go to BlackHammer.org. Make your contribution. Just make sure that you notate that it's for the ATL unit, or you can just put Lyrics and Ladles Open Mic Series, and we'll know that it's for us. Black Power. So $65 away from our goal, y'all. We can do this. We can do this.
I'm going to set a goal. I'm going to set an example, and I'm going to donate $10.
Black Power! And I'm going to follow my comrade's lead. Wait, hold on. Okay, hold on. Comrade Tariba actually donated $10.
Okay, so 65. Okay.
So we only
60,
have 50.
And then I'm donating 10, you donating 10.
I'm going to donate 15.
Well, damn, I guess I got to donate 15.
Okay, so I get a little paycheck this Friday coming up. So, okay, hold on. What we got?
So, wait a minute. 60, we down to $30.
We got to raise $30 more, comrade. Trapper comrades. So we gotta raise $30 more, y'all, and then we will have the resources to secure the Black Dot Culture Center for Lyrics and Ladles Open Mic Series. It is what it is.
Black Power.
Tariu says, but it's for you, my booze. Black Power, comrade. Thank you, comrade. $30 more. We got it, y'all. Okay, so next he talks about the so y'all know how y'all see these city workers, right? Oh, hold on. Rod said we got $20. Black Power, Rod.
That's what's up. So we just need $10 more.
We just need $10 more.
$10 more.
We just
See,
need
I
10
know
more.
that we always come.
Alex said he got 30.
Oh, we exceeded our goal today because the community takes care of itself.
Black
That's
Power.
What's up. Thank you so much, comrades.
Okay, can we do the calculations real quick just to make sure that we know what we got real quick?
Yes. So
I got my pen right here, so just
we had
tell
Kendrick.
me, girl,
Kendrick
tell
got 5.
Okay, let me write it
The
down.
first comrade had
Kendrick.
Diva had 10 instead of 5.
We got Tariva.
And then we
with
had
10.
You had 15. I had 15.
I got 15.
And then Rye has 20. And then Alex has 30.
Naya has 15. Alex at 20. And Rye at 20.
Alex has 30.
Oh, 30. Ooh. 30.
So this is 30, 60, 80.
85?
Yeah, 85.
85! Black Power comrades.
15, 30,
Don't ask me because I'm horrible at math.
45 plus 30 is 75. 75 plus 20 is 95.
95.
Y'all
Black
so bad.
Power
Y'all so
comrades.
bad. I can already tell you that this event's gonna be fire because we take care of ourselves. The community takes care of ourselves. So
Black
y'all.
Power. And if you have, I just want to put out there, if you have any relatives that live in Atlanta who might do, who have some form of revolutionary artistry, if they rap, if they sing, if they dance, if they play an instrument, please tell them about this event. Shout out to Comrade Robert, Chief Robert, who is over the agitation and propaganda department of the organization, who is currently working on our propaganda that we're going to be using for outreach, the flyers and things of that nature. And this is just so
This is powerful.
very powerful.
This is powerful.
Very
And this is just a glimpse into what we could do as a community.
Yes.
It really is.
So not only are we going to be having an open mic series happening on a regular basis, but we're going to be having homeless food drives on a regular basis.
Yes.
It's just
sparking a cultural revolution in the city of Atlanta.
Yes.
And this is going to replicate itself across the world.
My heart is just all over flutter. All right, y'all. So we're going to move on to the last part, the last portion of Chapter 5, and that is the strengthening of technological and military aspects of capitalism. But before we do that, is there anything else you want to raise in terms of like the colonial administration before we move on?
No, we can go ahead and move it.
Okay. So we're talking about the strengthening of technological and military aspects of capitalism. So pretty much right now at this point, these capitalists are using Africa not only as a way to fund their economy, but also a way to develop strategies, skills, different technologies, and all of these things to not only continue the exploitation of Africa, but to now protect it and make sure that these systems that they're setting up that we see even right now today, so that they could exist right now today as they already do exist right now today. And so he starts off by saying, first he lets us know that the colonial system that, had become permanent in Africa was able to permit the rapid development of technology in the skills within the metropolitan sectors of imperialism. So like all of the different advancements that we saw, back then, back then was fostered. They were able to happen so quickly because of the colonization and the exploitation that was happening in Africa and, in all other countries all around the world. And he says the output of the metropolitans versus the colonies had a gap of at least 20 times during the epoch of colonialism. And, that just makes me think about, like how there's this statistical fact that I've been hearing even since I was like in middle school that says that the average black family or colonized family, it would take us 237 years to catch up with the average white family in terms of, finances and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And just so we have an idea,
237 years.
Some Africans and some indigenous peoples, colonized people, don't even have Wi-Fi or internet access in their homes. Mm-hmm. And you just have to think like of the detriment that places on African and indigenous people in terms of, just trying to create a better way of life for themselves. And we're talking about, people not having Wi-Fi when you can go to any restaurant, any hotel. My cousin, shout out to my cousin Tori, who was here for the weekend, had a rental car this weekend that had Wi-Fi in it.
Oh, shit. But
a rental car with Wi-Fi in it. So this is the type of gap that we're talking about right now. And he goes on to say that profits reaped by colonialism went to building the military and technological advances of, imperialism.
And then it even goes into, before we even get there, like how this was on the verge of nuclear power. So we're talking, and I mean, that just, when I'm thinking about nuclear power, there's a lot of things that come to mind, but I'm thinking about like nuclear weapons. And just further being able to dominate and control literally every resource on the planet.
And then just for an example of like how these capitalists were competing with each other, he says the new colonial dimension to European military preoccupation was particularly noticeable in the sharp naval rivalry among Britain, Germany, France, and Japan before enduring, the First World War. That rivalry over colonies and for spheres of capitalist investment produced new types of armed navy vessels such as destroyers and submarines, By the end of the Second World War, military research had become the most highly organized branch of scientific research, and one that was subsidized by the capitalist states from profits of internal exploitation. Of international exploitation. Here's another example. Africa plus Asia plus Latin America contributed to the elaboration of the strategies by which competition among small companies gave way to domination by a small handful of firms in various economic activities. It was on the Indian trade routes that the shipping companies first started the conference lines in 1875. This monopoly practice spread rapidly on the South African trade and reached a high pitch in West Africa in the early years of this century. On the commercial side, it was in West Africa that both the French and the English derived considerable experience in pooling and market sharing, apart from the fact that little companies were steadily being gobbled up by bigger ones from the beginning to the end of colonialism.
Cannibalistic.
Ooh, we got a hashtag read that back, of course, by Comrade Alex. Black Power. Go, you want to read that, Comrade?
I can do that. I know what he's getting to. One byproduct of the soap was glycerin, which was utilized by making explosives. Africans were the ones introduced these people to soap. Yes, and Europe was like, but does it kill people though? Yeah.
Let's find out.
That's a good point.
Let's find.
That's a really good point.
So then he goes on to speak about, like the different actual material resources. Again, like Comrade Alex just raised, that they were using to create, weaponry. And he says, for example, iron ore was not one of Africa's major exports in the colonial days and may therefore appear to be an irrelevant example. However, iron was very significant in the economy of Sierra Leone, Liberia, and North Africa. It can be used to illustrate the trend by which the International Division of Labor allowed technology and skills to grow in the metropoles. Furthermore, it must be recalled that Africa was an important source of the minerals that went into making steel alloys, notably manganese and chrome. Manganese was essential in the Bessemer process. It was mined in several places in Africa, with the Noma mine on the Gold Coast having the largest single manganese deposit in the world. American companies owned the Gold Coast and North African mines and used the product in the steel industry of the United States. Chrome from South Africa and southern Rhodesia also played a similar role in steel metallurgy, being essential for the manufacture of stainless steel, y'all. Then he talks about columbite, which was another of African minerals valuable for the creation of steel alloys. Being highly heat resistant, one of its principal uses was in the making steel for jet engines.
Everything that they were trying to build was just so they can further dominate the planet and wherever the resources came from. I mean, everything. That's what their scientific development went towards.
And he even listened to copper.
Oh my God.
Copper was Africa's chief mineral export. Being an excellent conductor of electricity, it became an indispensable part of the capitalist electrical industry. It is an essential component of generators, motors, electric locomotives, telegraphs, lights and power lines, motor cars, buildings, ammunition, radios, refrigerator, and a host of other things. The technological era tends to be defined by the principal source of power. Today, we speak of a nuclear age since the potential of nuclear power is shown to be immense. The Industrial Revolution in Europe during the 18th and 19th centuries was the age of steam. In a parallel manner, the colonial epoch was the age of electricity. Therefore, the vital copper exports from Congo, northern Rhodesia, and other parts of Africa were contributing to the leading sector of European technology. From that strategic position, its multiplier effects were innumerable and were of incalculable benefit to capitalist development, y'all.
You know what it makes me think of for some reason? When Donald Trump, when they asked him who's going to pay for the wall, and he said that the indigenous Mexican people were going to pay for the wall, and they were like, no, the fuck, we're not. We're not going to pay for the wall. But it was just like, that was essentially like everything that they did. Like, not only are we going to steal your resources, you're going to help us pay for the things that we can't afford to pay for ourselves, that we don't want to, so that we can further our profit. That's just one way of looking at it. I mean, that's what it made me think of.
Listen. So, pretty much for the rest of the chapter, and I think this is when he's talking to y'all, because chapter 5.
It's long.
It was long.
And I wanted to even talk about like the beginnings of Unilever a little bit.
Yeah, we can. That's what I was getting ready to go into.
Yeah, I mean, you do, because I was like, it's these companies that are still on top today, Procter and Gamble, and all these mergers, and the things that we buy out of the stores every day.
So this section of the chapter, he says, the subtitle reads, "The example of Unilever as a major beneficiary of African exploitation," and already, as he lays it out, for its massive inputs of oils and fats, Unilever depended largely on its U.A.C. subsidiary, which was formed that very year. The U.A.C. itself never stopped growing. In 1933, well, first, hold on, let's back up so y'all know what U.C.A. is. So he says, then, in 1929, the African and Eastern, and the last big rival trading concern, was brought into partnership. So just like how we were saying earlier, like the three components of the colonial administration that we saw within these colonies, one which was to arbitrate between the competing sectors of, the capitalist
world,
so they can join. This is the example
of that. Yeah.
And he says, then in 1929, the African and Eastern, the last big rival trading concern, was brought into partnership, and the result of the merger was called the United Africa Company. During the 1914-18 war, Lever had begun making margarine, which required the same raw materials as soap, namely fat and oils and fats. The subsequent years were ones in which such enterprises in Europe were constantly getting bigger through takeover and mergers. The big names in soap and margarine manufactured on the European continent were two Dutch firms, Jergens. Jergens.
Now they spell it J-E-R.
Yeah.
But I noticed that too.
They try to change the face and they try to switch the fucking shit up to change the history just so it's not associated with how this motherfucking shit came into being. But we not stupid. We colonizing African people. We're not stupid. We're not stupid. Oh my gosh.
Vanderberg.
So he goes on to say, for its massive input of oils and fats, Unilever depended largely on its U.A.C. subsidiary, which was formed that very year. The U.A.C. itself never stopped growing. In 1933, it took over the important trading firm of G.B. Oliphant, and in 1936, it bought the Swiss Trading Company on the Gold Coast. By that time, it was not relying simply on wild palms in the Congo, but had organized plantations. The leather factories in the United States drew their oil supplies mainly from the Congo, and in 1925, even before Unilever in the U.A.C. emerged as such, the leather works in Boston showed a profit of 250,000 pounds. Unilever flourished in war and in peace. Only in Eastern Europe did the advent of socialism lead to the loss of factories through nationalization. By the end of the colonial period, Unilever was a world force, selling traditional soaps, detergents, margarine, lard, ghee, cooking oil, canned foods, candles, glycerin, oil cake, and toilet preparations such as toothpaste.
So Procter and Gamble, basically. All of it, everything that you basically buy on a consumer basis was from the beginning of that, and they got these things, stripping it from Africa and paying nothing for it, and then, like, even further down where it talks about where they started having problems financially, it says, but even in the worst financial years, the subsidiaries comprising that U.A.C. were invaluable assets in that they allowed the manufacturing side of Unilever to have control over a guaranteed source of essential raw materials. Of course, the U.A.C. itself also produced handsome monetary dividends, but it is the purpose here to draw attention not to the financial gains of U.A.C. and Unilever, but to the way that exploitation of Africa led to multiple technical and organizational developments in Europe. So they didn't even just benefit from it monetarily. They benefited from it in other ways. And you know, and they even prepared, like you had referenced before, for a rainy day, like when this can happen. So we're going to go ahead and get we're going to get this much set aside so that if there is a rainy day. And then what they would do is, in the event that there was a depression where the prices started raising,
lay it out, Nyah. Lay it out.
Then they're going to basically refuse to pay for the prices raised. We're still not going to pay y'all for these raw materials, or we're going to cut the price and we're going to up our price for you getting it to us. So that we can make up for the losses that we're having, because we're fighting and we're greedy and we don't want to compromise. So what we're going to do to keep us from being able to fight this out, we're just going to further exploit y'all. And we're going to refuse to pay you a livable wage. We're going to continue to allow you to starve. I mean, two firms which immediately stepped into detergent research were Unilever and Procter & Gamble, a soap combine with headquarters in Cincinnati. That's here in the U.S. And then they go into how the U.S. came in and started profiting. And we had already referenced, I'm jumping ahead, but it's just so much, Conrad. It really is.
So, lastly, the last part of the chapter, he goes into, he speaks to contributions of colonialism to individual colonizing powers. And these individual colonizing powers, he's pretty much, again, talking about Britain, France, and other capitalist countries. And first he talks about, like, the amount of looted African treasures, that were seen in British museums. And just to speak to it, he says, one Nigerian, after visiting Brussels in 1960, wrote, I saw for myself the massive palaces, museums, and other public buildings paid for by Congo ivory and rubber. Further on, he says, in recent times, African writers and researchers have also been amazed to find the amount of looted African treasures stacked away in the British Museum. There are comparable, if somewhat smaller, collections of African art in Paris, Berlin, and New York. Those are some of the things which, in addition to monetary value, help to define the metropoles as developed and civilized. So you want to tell me that these motherfucking capitalist countries were defined as civilized because they stole the wealth, the art, and the culture of our country and put it in their goddamn museums?
So imagine going to somebody's house. Say you lost something and you go to somebody's house and you find it there. That's what that's like. Basically, you go into somewhere else and saying, you know, this is actually something that came from Africa. This is something that we produce. This is some artifacts that we made. And then they have it in their museums, profiting off of it. It makes me think of like in the Black Panther movie when Killmonger, which is when they had to make him out to be a villain. When he went into that museum, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna take that back. And she was like, And I'm like, yeah, bitch, we gonna take that shit back.
Exactly.
That's our shit to fucking begin with. What are you talking about?
And another major portion of this chapter is how he speaks about, okay, so we're talking about colonizing power. So that means, you know, from your economic systems, your political systems, and especially your military. So now he speaks about how these colonizers used us as troops in their regimes.
Oh.
And he says, what did he say? Where is it? I'm sorry. The West Indian Regiment had black men in its ranks, Irish colonials and its NCOs and Englishmen as officers. By the end of the 19th century, the West Indian Regiment also included lots of Sierra Leoneans. The most important force in the conquest of West African colonies by the British was the West African Frontier Force, the soldiers being Africans and the officers English. In 1894, it was joined by the West African Regiment formed to help suppress the so-called Hutt Tax War in Sierra Leone, which was the expression of widespread resistance against the imposition of colonial rule. So another example that African people has always been fighting. We have always been fighting. Mm-hmm. In East and Central Africa, the King's African Rifles was the unit which tapped African lightning power on behalf of Britain. The African regiments supplemented the metropolitan military apparatus in several ways. Firstly, they were used as emergency forces to put down nationalist uprising in various colonies, meaning
overseers.
Oh, excuse me.
Bless you.
They were using other Africans to brutalize other Africans.
Overseers, yep.
Pretty much. Secondly, they were used to fight other Europeans inside Africa, notably during the First and Second World Wars. And thirdly, they were carried to European battlefields or to the theaters of war outside of Africa. So not only are you stealing our labor, but you're also stealing our lives. We now have to go fight and defend these colonizers who are in our continent, exploiting us and colonizing us.
Fighting against our own interests. It's a lot. And I didn't realize how prevalent that was, but that's even like, you do relate that to how there are so many Africans that fight in the U.S. military today. And we feel like, oh, we're fighting for our country, and it's not our country. African roles in European military operations were vividly displayed by the East African campaign during the First World War, when Britain and Germany fought for possessions of East Africa. At the beginning of the war, the Germans had in Tanganyika a regular force of 216 Europeans and 2,540 African Askari. During the war, 3,000 Europeans and 11,000 Askari were enrolled. 11,000 Askari. Wow, I mean, just look at that. Look how disproportionate that is.
And then listen to this part. A number of Africans served as colonial soldiers with pride because they mistakenly hoped that the army would be an avenue for displaying the courage and dignity of Africans, and perhaps in the process even earning the freedom of the continent by making Europeans pleased and grateful. And that just goes to what you just said
about the U.S. military.
About, our brothers and sisters here in the United States who go off into the military because imperialism, colonialism has forced some false sense of pride and solidarity with everything the United States is, when the United States is not only killing us on the indigenous people's land, because the indigenous people's lands, but they also recruit us into their military to have us go out and be killed on other people's land. And then people, I don't think people even understand like the number of homeless black veterans in the United States right now. We're talking about brothers who fought in the First World War, in the Second World War, who don't have housing.
Can't even get a meal.
Who can't even get a meal. And who, are suffering from untreated PTSD. Mental illness, like all of these different things that happen to us. And listen,
what about when they experimented on the
Tuskegee Airmen?
Yes, and refused treatment for them, and basically let that disease carry out in their body until it affected their brain to the point to where they went crazy.
And I mean, yeah, because even now, like if you don't get syphilis, it was syphilis, right? Yeah. If you don't get syphilis treated, you can get early onset dementia.
Mm-hmm. Lesions on your brain.
Like, this is the type of shit. And then, I know we're going off on a little tangent.
But it's all relative.
But it is all relative, because they would have you believe that African people came in contact with the HIV virus because we were eating meat. We were eating monkeys in the bush. In the bush. Mm-hmm. But here it is, not only are you testing, but motherfucker, you developed a whole disease on the bodies of African men.
Mm-hmm.
And then these Tuskegee Airmen, they joined the military. They joined the military.
Exactly.
So he says, the hope was without foundation from the onset, because the colonists were viciously using African soldiers as pawns to preserve colonialism and capitalism in general. A very striking instance of the above fact was provided when John Chilembwe led an African nationalist uprising in Malawi in 1915. Malawi was then a British colony, and although the British were lightening the Germans in East Africa at that time, they immediately dispatched a column of the car to contend with Chimbalawe. I'm sorry, y'all, I'm messing that up. Furthermore, before the car arrived, it was a German lieutenant who organized the resistance of Nisaya white settlers against Chimbale's bid for freedom. In the light of that evidence, one writer commented, while their countrymen in Europe fought the bloodiest war ever known in Africa, Europeans were instinctively white men first, and German and British second. Mm-hmm. For John Chilembwe was part of something that in the end would swamp all their colonial dreams.
Mm. So they put that shit aside for a minute. They put the nationalism aside because they were like, nah, we're going to still have this capitalist system in place because it benefits us all. But then we'll go back to fighting over our shit when we get this handled. And then Robert says, to this day, the military is allowed to experiment on soldiers with or without their consent. And that's definitely accurate. I mean, so yeah, we've been used like throughout history, like even outside the U.S. to fight on the front for capitalism and colonialism, to hold that system in place. And we've always been fed the lie that it's for you too. Mm-hmm. It's going to benefit you too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And lastly, before we close chapter 5, I just wanted us to look at this whole example of, because mainly we've been talking about like Britain, France, and things of that nature, but Comrade Walter Rodney lays out an example of how the United States was playing into everything that we saw going on right now. And for example, he speaks about, he says, the continued exploitation of African peoples within its own boundaries and in the Caribbean and Latin America must also be cited as evidence against American monster imperialism. The United States was a worthy successor to Britain as the leading force and policeman of the imperialist colonialist world from 1945 onward, and this was after the British was defeated in the World War. Under the Marshall Plan, by which United States capitalism aided Western European capitalism after the last war, it was announced that American experts were exploring Africa from end to end for agricultural and mineral wealth, especially the latter. Marshall Plan money through the Economic Commission for Africa went to firms like the Mine des Zelida, which mined lead and zinc in North Africa, and at the same time, the money allowed Americans to buy controlling shares in the company. Thus, in 1954, Morgan of the United States shared with the Rothschilds of Europe most of the net profit of 1,250 million old francs, which is equivalent to $8.16 million, made by the Mines des Zelida in that year. Similarly, the Belgian government received substantial aid from the United States to implement a 10-year economic program in Congo from 1950 to 1959, and for the price of the aid, United States monopolies established controls over some companies in Congo. The U.S. took second place after Belgium in Congo's foreign trade, and United States capitalists had to be granted a range of privileges. Y'all,
it's just so much. It's a lot.
It is a lot.
It goes on and on and on and on.
So. And
then, like, even when you get into like the U.S. became like the leading, like, capitalist successor, just basically carrying out everything. Mm-hmm. It even goes into the rate in which they were able to, expand, like how fast it was happening. It was like on page 193, it says research by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah revealed that direct private investment by the Americans in Africa increased between 1945 and 1958 from $110 million to $789. Most of this drawn from profits. The official estimates of profit made from the United States companies, and this is like, you're talking about Firestone and everything, and how they set up the plantations, the rubber plantations in Liberia from 1946 to 1959. Ford Motor Company was another, put at $1,234 million. And considering the question of economic partition, what is relevant is the rate of growth of the United States investments and profits compared to those of Britain, France, and Belgium. For example, the American investment in 1951 was $313 million, which was nearly 3 times what it was 5 years earlier. Like, they're just getting greedier and greedier.
Comrade Alex has another hashtag. Read that back.
Yeah, and it's a really good one, too. Fascism is a deformity of capitalism. Fascism is the tools of colonialism used against Europeans. The poor whipping class weren't supposed to demand full benefits of colonialism. So basically, how dare they want the same things that the ruling class has. Yeah. And, yeah.
Black Power, my trapper. So we've come to the end of today's episode. And we are now on the last chapter of How Europe Underdeveloped Africa.
Ooh, and it's a lengthy one.
It is. It is entitled Colonialism as a System for Undeveloping Africa. And originally, we had the plan to go ahead and read all of chapter 6, but my comrade Naya had a struggle with me this morning, in which I really unite with. And just that the struggle was for us to really, we're going to split chapter 6 up into 2 phases. So that's going to be for next week. We'll go into the first half, and then the following week, we will finish chapter 6. And I unite with that, and I unite with it because as a revolutionary, being exposed to this book has really, deepened my development. And I wouldn't want to steal the opportunity from myself or any of my other comrades or even our viewers to really, get into this book the way that we should. And we are an institution of political education. Mm-hmm. The Revolutionary Book Trap was formed to provide political education to the masses. So we have to do everything within our power to make sure that you can consume political education in the most, enlightening way possible.
Yeah.
So
we really want you to internalize it, because we want to walk away from this. You're not going to
be the same. Well, you're not going to remember.
You're not going to remember every single thing that you've read from this book. Some of you might. And it'll be something that you have to revisit. But to take away what we can from it, because to know, like I said, how Africa came to be in the state that it's in now isn't by its own depravity. It's by the exploitation. And even all of these companies that we buy from that we don't even think about every day. You go to Walmart or wherever you go to shop and you pick up a bar of soap, and you really have no idea that how this company, you hear people say, well, they exploit Africa. How? This is how. This book lays out exactly how. And so I want to get as much out of this as I can, and I just want to make sure that all the trappers do too. And it's just so important. This is a really good book, and I did not realize that it was going to lay out as much as it did for me.
And it laid everything out.
I mean, it really, really did.
Now, I ain't gonna lie. It's been a difficult read, but only because Walter Rodney is like an elaborate writer, and he just
And I can only imagine. What's she over there doing?
I have no idea.
She cutting up because we on live.
Yeah,
I can just imagine.
I forgot what I was about to say. Oh yeah, such an elaborate writer, and he's very, very extremely detail oriented. So yeah.
I would have loved to heard him speak.
Yeah. Okay, so for our next reading assignment, we're going to read from the beginning of chapter 6, Colonialism as a System of Underdeveloping Africa, up into Education for Underdevelopment. And this part, he says, education is crucial in any type of society for the preservation of the lives of its members and the maintenance of the motherfucking social structure.
A motherfucking word. Wow.
Yeah, we can't.
That's why I'm like, we can't just breeze over that.
Black power.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so our next reading assignment: the beginning, colonialism as a system for underdeveloping Africa, up into the subtitle of education for underdevelopment. So, y'all, we're gonna go ahead and get out of here, but not before we not only did we raise the money to secure the venue, we surpassed it. And
Black power.
I mean, I don't even know how many times we can say it, but I mean, it has to be said, and it must continue to be said. Just the simple fact that without our supporters, there would be no Black Hammer.
Yeah, absolutely not.
There would be no Black Hammer. And every time that we are able to put on a homeless food drive, every time that we are able to put on any type of event, it's because of the power of the people. And just, you said something earlier where you was like, the community does for itself or something like that. And when you send that $5 or that $10 or that $20 or that $30, you just put food in the mouth of maybe 100 people. Homeless people who have been absolutely discarded, spat on, shitted on, brutalized by the same motherfucking system that would not be here today if it wasn't for this same person that they're spitting on, brutalizing, discarding. Mm-hmm. This is what you are contributing to.
And we do it for all African and colonized people. We're not going to discriminate against anybody because of, what their preferences are. And I won't go too deep into it, but I will say that Black Hammer is really an organization about all African and colonized people. We love everybody that contributes to this work. As far as if you are a colonized person, we are going to feed you. Mm. If you are a colonized person, we are going to try to help house you. We are going to develop our culture. It isn't our job to try to feed poor white people. Mm-mm. I'm just going to say it.
And we're not going to do it.
And we're not going to apologize for it. This is an organization that feeds its people, and that is African and colonized people. And I have no apologies about that.
Nothing openly biased to colonized people. And Conrad Ghazi says, don't forget to shout out to Nigeria. Shout out
Black
to our
power.
viewers in Nigeria who are watching. I saw that you were putting comments about, so we already know that Facebook is limiting the viewership and how we are able to get out, the Revolutionary Book Trap and everything that we do on Facebook. And Comrade Ghazi, there's people in Africa. We have our brothers and sisters in Africa mm-hmm. who are struggling to have access to the things that we have access to every single day. And we have to that's why we tell y'all every time you come into the Revolutionary Book Trap, or if you're viewing propaganda, share as widely as you can. Because, there's different degrees to colonialism, but our brothers and sisters in Africa literally are trying to survive off of $1 per day. And Comrade Robert says, Facebook is limiting our shares. That's why I'm so excited to know that Comrade Chief Robert, we're in development of creating our own social media app. So we can get the fuck up off of this bullshit. Mm-hmm. But until we produce it, we have to do everything that we can to spread this stuff everywhere. Mm-hmm. So shout out to our comrades in Nigeria that are watching. We love you.
We're going to build there too. Yes. We're going to build branches there. We are a global organization of African and colonized people. So yes, shout out.
And when we say build there, when we say build on the continent, when we say build on the motherland, we're not talking about having comrades get together to take a couple of pictures, act like they having meetings, and then send them money and all kind of shit like that. We're talking about organizing a force on the ground. Okay?
That's right.
A force, an actual material force on the ground. I know you caught that, Ghazi. I know you caught that. But anyway, comrades, trappers, we're going to go ahead and get up out of here. Don't forget, Lyrics and Ladles is coming to you. The podcast is coming to you. We're just doing so much great shit.
It's because we love the community.
Yeah.
We love our people.
Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all Sunday. Black power, y'all.
Black power.